Welcome to the podcast. We do recover with Jared Miller, your host.
And I'm Dr. Terry Sellers, your co-host.
This is a podcast about recovery from addiction.
We want to talk about what successful recovery can look like.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center, Rise Up Subs, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn.
Listeners, welcome to episode 133. We are back in studio after taking a couple weeks off. It's been so long, Doc. I feel like this is deja vu, not even like a next episode.
This is our first episode ever.
I think it's been like a month since you've been here, man.
Is that true? I think that's probably true, yeah.
Yeah, I think the last one we did was like a month ago. So today is October 20th, 2023, everybody. And in the good spirit of getting close to Halloween, we've picked a spooky topic.
Whoa.
Today, we're going to talk about brain mapping. Now, Doc, let me know how accurate this is. Brain mapping is when you take a client, you cut their head open, and you put a map on their brain to all the good places in their community, right? The fellowships, the sober living houses. You erase the path to the dope man's house.
Right.
And then you put their head back together.
Correct.
Right? Kind of like Frankenstein.
Everything,
right?
Everything you said is totally correct, except we're higher tech these days, so we don't have to put the map in there. We just put a GPS device in there.
You just map it.
And then close it back up, and now you can
Got
get
See, the old school days, they had to print off a MapQuest, 4 or 5, 6 pieces of paper, staple it, and then stick it in your head.
with the directions at the bottom.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So it's a good thing none of us know what we're talking about here. But for that, we've actually brought
We brought an expert.
We brought in an expert. You want to go ahead and introduce her?
I don't know her. Her name's Dawn McComb. So I met Dawn about 4 minutes ago. And
We're like this.
We are like that,
We're
for sure.
way back.
Before this thing started, they were having a contest on who could crack the most inappropriate jokes. And I think right now it's 50-50.
No, I lost.
But we've agreed to withdraw that contest for the next 52 minutes.
We did?
Yeah.
Something about a minivan
Well, I don't
mom.
think he agreed with you or me. You agreed, but we're going to still do it. Okay, so Dawn McComb, who I just met, and very interested to get to know her. So can we?
So Dawn works with me at Steps Recovery Center outpatient in St. George.
You guys are like completely screwing up the podcast.
I know. We're going to get into...
We'll get there.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We'll get there.
Sorry. It's been a month. I don't know.
We'll
I
get
know, right?
there.
Who's the one screwing it up?
Yeah.
I've forgotten the format.
Oh, Dawn. I like Dawn all of a sudden a lot.
She is a strong woman, man.
Yeah. And
So
don't mess around with her. She'll kill you.
I have the opportunity of working with Dawn in our outpatient setting at Steps Recovery Centers in St. George, Utah. She's an amazing therapist. She's the glue and the grease, right? She holds the place together. So Dawn is a CMHC.
I am.
CMHC. So
And an SUDC.
Will you do me a favor? We have audience members that probably don't know what that means. So tell us what an SUDC is and
Is
what
that
a
what they say
CMCH
at the end of
is.
a bank ad when you try to get credit?
Yes, it is. That's exactly what it is.
Yep.
I'm a substance use disorders counselor
Beautiful.
and a CMHC?
Clinical
mental health counselor.
Beautiful.
a lot of credentials behind the name, a lot of school.
So SUDC, for those listening that don't know, that's a certificate program. Where'd you do that?
It's actually a degree.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I did that in Santa Barbara, California.
Oh, really? And then CMHC is a master's degree, right?
It is.
And where'd you do that?
Walden University.
Okay. And where are you from?
Long Beach. I live here for the past 6 years, though.
Okay, cool.
Originally from California.
Well, we're going to get into more about Dawn in a minute, but we do have some things that we normally do that Sean's getting upset about. So
yeah, that's true. Let's get our sponsorship some love. Should we do that?
Sure.
So episode 133, part 1 is brought to us by Steps Recovery Centers. Steps Recovery Centers is an adult substance abuse and mental health treatment provider. Steps Recovery Centers provides all levels of care. They have they have a detox facility, multiple residential treatment centers, and outpatient treatment services reaching from the top of Utah to the bottom. Recovery starts with you, and at Steps Recovery Centers, there is always hope. Call them today at 801-800-8142 or visit their website at stepsrc.com to learn more. That's the official tagline. I started this thing off with, I love Steps. Whether you live in Utah or not, we pick people up from the airport. We'll take you or your loved one straight to detox, right? So for those people that are in Utah, It's a great resource if you live outside of the state of Utah. I know we got some listeners outside of the state of Utah. If you or your loved one needs help, reach out to them. Like I said, we'll pick you up straight from the airport, take you right into detox. We appreciate them sponsoring this podcast.
Yes, we do. They're good to us.
Episode 133, part 1 is also brought to us by Rise Up Supplements. Rise Up Supplements is a nootropic line aimed at optimizing brain function and supporting mental health. They have 2 powerful blends. The first one is Mindful Mood. Mindful Mood helps decrease anxiety and enhance mood. The second one is Mind Shift. Mind Shift helps increase focus and optimize brain function. Again, these are supplements for the brain, the noggin, the old noodle. If you're interested, go to riseupsups.com. That's RISEUPS.com. That's promo code podcast20 saves you 20% off at checkout. It has been a minute since we've done these. Usually I nail those lines.
You do nail those. You didn't totally nail it today, but you did fine.
Yeah.
That's my new favorite stuff, you know.
Is
What?
it?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
What?
Those supplements.
Really?
Yeah, I talked to her the other day. The Mind Shift you were saying.
I
Make a
like
world
I
of
like Mind
difference.
Shift. I do.
Yeah.
In fact, I need some Mind Shift.
I always tell
I'll have to hit
people
you up
the
earlier-
Mind
later.
Shift is like the gas pedal. The Mindful Mood's like the brake.
Yeah, I need gas
right?
pedal.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
I haven't even gotten into the mindful mood yet because I just need more gas. So.
We could.
Should we start it off with new and goods? Sean Denovan, let's get you in the mix. I see you over there scrolling. You're busy at work. What's
You're
new and good
welcome.
in your life, man? How's your October been?
It's almost over. It's like just whizzed by. It's gone. I'm already looking at November, going, what happened?
What are you
I
talking
don't have
about?
time for this. Got too many things to do. What's going on? I need more time.
Get him some. Would you get him some breaks,
Yeah.
please?
Yeah, we need some Mindful Mood up in the studio for Denovan. You
Yeah.
got your lumberjack sweater on, though. You going to go home and chop some wood?
Yeah, let me see it. Yep, there we go.
The flannel, baby. He's in the flannel.
It was crisp this morning, so I decided to put something on that would help me deal with the crispness in
It's
the
a
air.
crisp 95 degrees right now.
I know.
Thanks, Denovan. Appreciate it. Let's get to our guest. Dawn, what's new and good in your life? How's your October been?
Yeah, kind of like Sean. It's flown by. I can't believe it's like Halloween. But I was literally just at Costco buying Christmas decorations. I know that's
You
sad.
cannot buy Christmas decorations in October.
Here's the thing.
All right, podcast over.
That's against the rules right there.
Okay, but here's the thing. So I have 5 adult children
Okay.
who are all married,
Okay.
and I don't deal with in-laws. So we have our Thanksgiving, Christmas combined the first weekend in November, and then I peace out for the rest of the holiday season. Like, I'll be back.
I actually love that. That's rad. Just get it all done in one sitting.
Well, and then they get to they've got kids, right? So they do their kid thing, and then they go see their in-laws, and no pressure from me. Like, I don't, fight for time, and everybody comes because it's like before all the nonsense starts happening.
Hey, if it's working for you, that's great. And I love it. I don't really know about these haters, but I'm all about it. That sounds
There's no
awesome.
haters here. I'm actually evaluating the utility of that approach, and it seems like it's a pretty decent approach.
It is a little crazy that Christmas comes earlier and earlier every year, right? Eventually, we're going to be like 4th of July fireworks and then just Christmas.
If we get to the 4th of July fireworks,
I know.
we're probably going to have New Year's Day and then Christmas.
It really does feel
Pretty
like
sad.
school starts one week and Christmas is the next.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
You got something for us, Denovan? I see you over there
No, it's
scheming.
No, never mind.
He took off his flannel shirt.
I'll ask me after the show. It's a good joke.
Okay. All right, Sellers, you're up. What's new and good, buddy? What's going on in the world of the doc?
I got nothing. I got
Every
nothing.
week, man. I'm
I
going to
got
force you.
nothing.
Don, help me out with this. We're going to
Okay.
force Sellers to find a positive event going on in his life in the month of October.
Well, my whole life is positive, first of all.
Well, you know what I mean.
Everything's good.
Got a new thermos the size of your head.
No, that's the downsized thermos, and it's lovely. Saves me a bunch of money. But what is new and good? Let's see here. We had the Sobriety Foundation Gala last week,
Attaboy.
and as you're aware, I'm a board member of the Sobriety Foundation, and it's kind of our big event of the year. And I got to sit at a table with some good friends of mine. Thanks.
Yeah, it was
Sat
fun.
got to sit with Jared and his wife. My wife and I went, and then had some other good friends at the table as well, and that's a fun event. It's a lot of work for the board, but we raised a ton of money the other night, and it's great.
Your old co-host was there when you guys would record just on the drive to. What was the name of that podcast?
That was Two Doctors on a Drive.
It's still out there, people. Go check it out.
Yeah,
the doc literally has a phone, and he's just cruising in a car with another
Well, we got crazy and bought a really decent piece of equipment one time, but it was recorded in our cars, in my car, in traffic. Like literally, we're driving. Well, at the time, Chris, we did it a few times, but we worked either at Aqua, which is up in Heber, so a 30-minute drive, or we still were doing it when Kristen was working at Highland Ridge and I was working at Pathways up in Salt Lake. And so we just bring along a thing, this little recording device, and record. We had topics, but it was pretty free-flowing. Because
can we show it, Sean? Sean's got it pulled up
there.
Right
it
here.
is. Two Doctors on a Drive. Musings on
in the
Addiction.
history.
Oh, it's terrible audio. There's no question.
Musings on Addiction.
Yeah. We just sit there and basically chat. We'd occasionally, not occasionally. We'd usually have a topic we tried to talk about, but half the time, like people are honking at us, and like you can hear all the traffic stuff. You can hear me swearing at other drivers, and so that was the origins of my podcast history right there.
Too funny.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
What's new and good in your life?
New and good in my life. I think Sean's working on that. We'll try to get that up for you guys that are watching the video version of this. My mom came down. So yeah, last weekend.
She's not your mom. She's the podcast's mom.
I know. Listen, I'm a mama's boy through and through. Yeah, so she came down this weekend to spend some time with me and Mandy. That's going to be super fun. We got a tea time tomorrow morning. That's new and good. The Sobriety Foundation was cool. After the Sobriety Foundation event last weekend, me and Mandy went to the Utes game, and that's why my 5-head got fried. It's peeling currently. You're welcome. But yeah, no, it was a blast. Like I've had a great October. It's been
good.
It's been good, man. A lot of new and good.
Did the Utes win last week? I can't remember.
They did. They played Cal.
That's right.
I mean, we don't have an offense to save our lives, but
that's okay.
We won.
That's okay. My team doesn't have an offense or a defense.
The only
but
time
our special teams is good.
We're getting way off topic and we're running out of time.
What?
But the only time I ever heard the crowd go crazy, except for when we scored touchdowns, is when they posted BYU losing to, was it Baylor? Who was it?
We lost to TCU last week.
TCU. That just the Utes crowd would go crazy every time, and they would put it on the board and they would like do the in and out thing,
I'll have you know that when they post at the LaVelle Edwards Stadium, when they post that the Utes are losing, nobody cares.
Oh, I don't believe that for a second.
We don't have that much energy to give to hatred. Sorry.
Oh yeah. That rivalry is alive and doing well.
Oh, that's right.
All I know is the Astros were winning last night when I stopped.
Are you
watching.
an Astros fan?
I hate the Astros.
Oh.
I'm a fan of whoever is playing the Astros.
Really? How did that come about?
Because I'm actually a Dodgers fan.
Makes sense.
Well, I
LA Dodgers.
can't think of very many teams I hate more than the Dodgers.
Oh.
The Yankees. I hate the Yankees way more than the Dodgers, so it's okay.
Let's
move.
Yankees. Yeah, let's do it.
Don, I'm going to ask you some questions before we get started on topic real quick.
The topic of the conversation today is brain mapping therapy.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's actually
but I want to know, Don, a little bit.
Spotting.
Sorry, brain spotting therapy.
Yeah.
If he'd have let me talk, I would have said brain spotting.
Would you?
Yeah. Well, I'm seeing the book, right? Don, tell us, first of all, just a little bit about yourself. Like, who are you?
Who am I? So, we'll talk about my professional life.
But we want to know a little bit personal stuff, too. I want to know about your family.
Well, I've got 5 kids, and we're doing Christmas next week. How's that?
That's what she's giving you, Doc.
That's all I get.
I've got 5 grandkids.
How old are your kids?
My youngest is 23. My oldest is, oh gosh, Dallas, how old are you?
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Sorry. It's okay. 35?
No.
30?
He's like 40. No, he's 30. You know what? You're right. He's like 35, 37. I don't know. Poor Dallas. He's like, Mom.
I have
Whatever.
I have kids of similar ages.
Yeah?
Yeah. Not 5, though. I have less, but anyway. Okay, and 5 grandkids.
5 grandkids.
How's grandma being? How's it being grandma?
Gosh, I don't see those kids enough.
Where do they live?
They live in Enterprise.
Oh.
That's the worst part. We're so close, and I just,
Wow.
yeah. I know. Those
Oh,
poor
well.
babies. In fact, I just talked to their mom and she's like, when do we get to see Gigi Dawn? Do we get to see her anymore? I'm like, oh, I'm actually leaving for New Zealand. Poor Jared. Actually, he's really excited for me to go in the mid-November.
Well, that's new and good.
I wouldn't say
Zealand.
excited for you to go. We're gonna, we're gonna do our best without you.
He's excited that you get to go.
Yes.
There you go.
I'll be happy for you. Just bring me back a trinket or something, and we'll call it even.
I
All right.
definitely will.
Where'd you grow up? Where are you from originally?
I was born in Long Beach. I
Okay.
moved here from Santa Barbara, actually.
Okay.
This is where I raised my kids mostly, on the beach in Santa Barbara. So they're all little surf bums.
That's nice.
I grew up all over the U.S. and Canada. My dad did contract work for the government, so
Okay.
we just moved a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like an army brat, but not.
The question I have, and we'll roll into the topic today, is what got you in this field? That always interests me, right? Because like for us,
That's a
it's a
great
little
question.
obvious. We've been doing this podcast. We're both in recovery. I know that you're what we call kind of the normie folk, right? Or at least I'm assuming. What got you into this field of wanting to work in social work, substance abuse?
Normie, she's high right now.
High on life.
Just a little.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, so I went back to school as an adult and didn't want to, actually. Just
So why'd you do it?
Felt compelled to do it. Yeah, it was
That was
kind of a weird situation.
It's an internal sort of calling thing?
Yes.
I got to go back to school? Okay.
Yeah, and I fought it for a while, and it just kept getting worse and worse. I finally signed up last minute for the only class that was available. It was an evening class where I met this woman named Elisa Gothel, and she was a professor in Santa Barbara. And yeah, that was all she wrote. I had tons. My family is riddled with addiction and death from addiction and incarceration from addiction and all the fun things. And yeah, and I have my own fun nonsense in my past. So it's all good. I didn't want to have to deal with this population at all. And it was not what I wanted to do. I'm like, you all are a mess. Why would I do that? But
Super common feeling.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but the first class I took was actually teenage drug use prevention. And Elisa taught that class, and next thing I know, I'm doing research. I had a degree, and the school just said, just come do 10 units with us, and then we'll complete your degree. I'm like, cool. I ended up taking 40 units to get an associate's degree as a substance use disorders counselor. And yeah, I knew it was what I was supposed to be doing. So I haven't looked back. I've worked with youth and adults for
So how long have you been in this field then?
about 10 years.
Okay. All right. Cool. Well,
The youth are a tough population in and of themselves, and yeah, I've worked with the youth as well. We've talked about this, and yeah, it's a good starting point though.
isn't that the key population though? Like if we could
Oh,
really
yeah.
affect the lives of youth, then we could really make some dents in this whole thing, right?
I'd rather work with youth than adults, but you have to work with their parents too. So
Oh man, I can't tell you how many people. So I don't specifically work with youth, but I know a number of people that do, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard that comment right there. These youth that are struggling don't come from a vacuum; they come from a house where they're struggling.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's hard. That's a hard part of the job for sure.
So Don, today I asked you to come on the podcast. You shared that you had some ideas. We met later. You said I really would love to do something on trauma work. One of the tools for trauma work, I've been calling it the wrong thing this whole time, and I apologize. Instead of brain mapping, it's brain spotting.
Correct.
So let's go ahead. Where do you want to jump into this topic and how it affects clients, individuals?
Can I ask some questions? Let's get really general first of all, because I bet almost none of our listeners have any idea what brain spotting is.
Yeah, there are 6 practitioners in southern Utah, I guess.
I would
And
say
I'm 6.
as
I'm
a
number 6,
physician,
yes.
I'm not even 100% sure what we're talking about today. So,
I'm actually number 7, I think.
so
So
enlighten us on what generally what are we talking about today?
yeah, so brain spotting was developed by David Grand, and he trauma informed therapist who had many trauma modalities, trained in the majority of all trauma modalities, worked with people who had dissociative disorder. So they used to be known back in the day as multiple personalities. And he was using EMDR quite a bit with them, and just kind of happened to find that when he would use his hand, to like have their eyes move back and forth, and found that at certain spots their eyes would do certain things, or their body would have a certain reaction. And he kind of went with it and developed brain spotting. So, and he just feels like it's way more effective. And I have a really good friend, Mark Pimsler, who I went to a training with, my last training in experiential therapy. And he is very well versed in almost all trauma modalities. And he said that he uses brain spotting more than anything, and it was really effective. So I decided I'd go and get trained in it. So
what does that training entail?
So you go to a 4-day, 8 to 6.
Sort of conference-like thing.
Right, yeah. It's an intensive kind of training, actually. And then you have to have 6 hours of one-on-one consultation and 50, do it on 50 people, 50 sessions, and like record and synthesize those 50 sessions, and then you're certified. So
there's a body that certifies you. There's a governing sort of body that
correct.
You submit all that stuff to, and then you get a certification in it.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. So you can practice and not be certified, but once you're certified, then like you're on their listing, I guess, or whatever, and all the little qualifications.
Credentialed through them, and they help
yeah.
publicize or promote that you're one of the people that's certified.
Correct.
In that modality.
Right.
Are you aware of people that are practicing this that are not certified?
So I just actually at that conference met a couple of people, met one gal from down here, and then another girl who was getting trained. So, and we're all practicing, and I think Julie is certified, but yeah, I'm not positive. So,
yeah,
but she kind of taken a long route. I guess she had some kids in the interim and kind of stopped for a while, and then
life
has
gets
come
in the way.
Yeah, life gets lifey.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So before we got a couple minutes before we go into the break, I just wanted to tell our listeners, if you are watching this live on Facebook, if you have any questions or comments, anything, if you type into the comment section, we can get those for Dawn while she's here with us, if I can pay attention to it, and I promise that I'll try.
I'll look at it. I can't read it, but I can look at it and point and tell you to read it.
Yeah, and just to jump back into the conversation, so there's it seems to me like there's a lot of different ways to deal with trauma. You mentioned EMDR.
Correct.
EMDR, explain to the listeners how that's effective and maybe the differences between EMDR and the brain spotting.
So I'm not certified in EMDR. I just am aware of it. It's movement desensitization reintegration. That's what EMDR stands for. Basically, in trauma, you have different parts of your brain, right, that are affected by different things that happen to you in your life. And in order to have a memory, you actually have little proteins, platelets that lay down an actual track. So the first time you use, right, because it's emotional and it's physical and there's so many different things being brought into it. It's kind of like a lightning bolt, and then it goes right to your limbic system, which is the part of your brain that doesn't actually think about anything. It runs all your shuns, your circulation, your,
it's like the automatic
respiration.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, when somebody says to you, because you've been using, they're like, what the hell were you thinking? And you can literally say, I wasn't. Yeah. Because you weren't, right? I mean, it's just right into that autonomic brain system. So basically, what brain spotting is doing is when you're activated, and we try and help a client get activated from 0 to 10. We don't want them to be more than an 8, right? Because then you're starting to kind of crawl out of your skin. They get activated on the subject, and then we just hold a pointer, because they discovered holding your hand up for 45 minutes was really tiring. And so now, those little flag holder pointers that, like, if you see somebody in a crowd and they're like leading and they've got a little flag at the top and they're like a car antenna.
Not the giant foam hand number one. Not that.
No.
Okay.
No, it looks more like a car antenna. And anyway, and it literally is one of those. Oh,
We're going to come back and get that after this little 30-second break from our sponsors. So to hear more, join us after this little sponsorship mention. We appreciate our listeners.
You are listening to We Do Recover with Jared Miller and co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. We'll be right back after this short break with more of We Do Recover with Jared Miller. Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center, Rise Up Subs in the St. George Hilton Garden Inn.
If you or your loved one is trapped in the cycle of addiction, there is a way out.
At Steps Recovery Center in Utah, we believe in second chances and new beginnings. Our evidence-based treatments, compassionate staff, and supportive community guide you on the path to recovery.
It is time to reclaim your life. Take the first step towards freedom, resilience, and a brighter tomorrow. Reach out to Steps Recovery Centers today.
Recovery starts with you, and at Steps, there is always hope. Call us or visit our website to learn more.
We welcome you back to We Do Recover with Jared Miller, co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center, Rise Up Subs in the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. And now with part 2 of our podcast, Jared Miller and Dr. Terry Sellers.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the second part of episode number 133 of We Do Recover with Jared Miller. We have special guest Don McComb in the studio. And Don has been educating us on brain spotting, and we'll get right back to that. But before we do, we need to mention another sponsor, at least one more. We have a company that helps us out. They are called the Hilton Garden Inn. And the Hilton Garden Inn has been sponsoring this podcast essentially from the beginning of the podcast.
Day one.
Yeah.
Man.
They've been fantastic to us. And if you happen to travel through southern Utah, just look up Hilton Garden Inn, do a quick little Google search. It'll take you right there. The Hilton Garden Inn is, well, first of all, it's always sunny and bright at the Hilton Garden Inn. Did you know that?
I love it. It is.
The Hilton Garden Inn is fantastic. They have great staff. They have wonderful amenities. The rooms, again, I've been harping on this a little bit because I don't stay in hotel rooms a ton, but I've been in quite a few hotel rooms in my day. They're huge. Those rooms are big.
At the Hilton, they're huge.
Yeah, they're plenty.
Today, they're making these like Hyatt rooms that are like the size of a closet.
True.
Right.
True.
Like there's no room to. You
feel like you're in a suite.
You can run around in the room in the Hilton Garden Inn. It's big, and the pool obviously is lovely, and the staff's super friendly. So just give them a shot, and they'll treat you right. I promise.
And just a quick little, I don't want to cut in too much to Don's time here, but a quick little story about this that I've never shared, and we're coming up on like our 3-year anniversary. It was, well, we passed it, but they've been our day one. And the cool thing about this is substance abuse affects so many people, and I won't out the person that has direct ties to it, but there was somebody at the Hilton Garden Inn that is pretty high up that was able to help us out with this, that has family members that have struggled, and it was near and dear to his or her heart. And so that individual really was like, as soon as we basically pitched the idea, he or she was like, absolutely, right? Like, what can we do? So just cool.
I think it might be a he.
Yeah, it is.
I'm just guessing here.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they do the conference, the NA conference every year at that hotel.
Yeah, that's cool.
So big promoters, big helpers.
Yeah.
We love that.
No question.
Since listening to your podcast, I actually have stayed there.
Have you?
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Just because you brought it up.
Well,
I was like,
thanks.
okay, cool. But yeah.
That goes well for us because now they know that we've at least sent them a tiny bit of business.
Yeah.
So they love us for that, and we love them for sponsoring it. So
It's one of those nights I was working until 10 o'clock, and I'm like, I am not driving home.
where's
I'm
home?
exhausted. It's an hour away.
Where is
Takes me
it?
a minute. Springdale.
She lives up right at the mouth of Zion.
How many Springdales are there in Utah?
There's Springville.
I think there's
And then there's
at least
Springdale.
2 Springdales.
Really?
I believe there's a Springdale up in Provo Canyon. I'll look it up later. We're not going to look it up on the podcast. But there also is a Springdell, D-E-L-L, in
Different
Utah.
place.
Springdale, Springdale, and Springdale. All right, let's get back to it. We were starting to talk about brain spotting.
Yep.
And you were starting to describe the this is a really cool topic to me because a couple of things. A long time ago, I was around during this kind of when we started having trauma-informed therapists, right? And trauma-informed therapy. And to me, it was weird. I don't know. I just didn't love the term. But, you can't stay in the business very long and realize we're really treating trauma. We're not. Addiction is people's way of dealing with trauma. And can you say every single person who becomes addicted on the planet has trauma? Probably not, but a giant proportion of them do. Most of them do.
Statistically, they're much higher to develop a substance abuse disorder if they have some form of physical, sexual, emotional trauma in their background.
Yeah,
right?
and so if all we do in treatment is teach people how not to use drugs and alcohol, then you have only treated the symptom. You've only treated their way to deal with trauma, but you haven't treated the trauma. So, fortunately, we're developing more and more tools to deal with trauma now, and brain spotting sounds like it's one of them. And so, let's keep going. You were talking about, so we left you in the audience at a football game with a pointer. No, that's not where we were. But you were talking about, the giant foam finger. You're going to do that once, aren't you? You're going to use that in one of your brain spotting sessions.
I am.
Okay, but let's get back to that. So you've got a pointer, an area of focus.
Right. Because basically it's just something for the eyes to focus on, and it's moved across the field of vision until the therapist sees a reaction. And if somebody's very aware of their body, they will feel a reaction, and they can, say, oh, nope, it's over here. It's more to the left. When I had it done on me, I was kind of skeptical. Because I love to study neurology, they're giving the first half of the first day presentation, and I'm like, oh, this is a bunch of woo-woo. Like I was,
Bunch of snake oil.
Yeah. And so they're like, email us if you want to be somebody that we work with. And I was like, oh, well, sent in that email on a subject that I thought I had really done a lot of processing on and I was good with, right? Like I was a solid SUDS 0, right? Like I was not reactionary on it.
In your own personal life?
In my own personal life. Yeah. There's 35 people there. And I had in the past been very reactionary about it. And so I get there and they picked me. And so I'm working with this professional therapist and sitting across from her, and 35 people are gathered around, like right, all around. And you can follow, the pointer to get a point, or you can just start like saying the story, and she will notice, or whoever your therapist will notice, she noticed like I kept looking to one specific spot over and over again. She's like, so it's up here. And I'm like, yeah, because I kept looking at the air conditioner out there anyway. So I was like, oh, whatever. And so then I just keep looking there and I keep talking about it. And then like next thing I know, I'm like weeping and sobbing. And I still have a vulnerability hangover from that session of 35 people watching me process stuff and making all these connections that I had no idea were really like tied to that particular situation in my life. And it was definitely a testimony to me that there's
that was
something
your
about
buy-in
it.
moment.
That was my buy-in
It's
moment,
more than just snake oil.
Yeah.
What is it about? Sorry, can I? Let me shoot away.
It's your podcast, dude. I'm just here for the ride.
You're just the good looks on it.
Oh my gosh.
So what is it about?
Let me assure you.
What is it about the spot that you're looking to and the point in the brain? Because it sounds to me like, and I'm not the brightest crayon in the box, but it sounds like there's some kind of correlation there. That like where you're looking for memory recall, they're seeing through the eyes, like
Right.
where it's coming from in the brain. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, actually. So can think of it in terms of like files in your brain, right? And some files are organized and some are not really well organized, right? And when you're looking at a particular spot, you can be associating that with the situation. But it's also, I mean, obviously nothing is standalone in the brain, right? So it's like yeah, I have this thing about my daughter, and then it's also about my mom and about my husband and my children and when I grow up. And so it's kind of, and it's a very interesting feeling because after a while, like I had to close my eyes and I could just like feel my brain on fire. And it felt like it was just like sorting through all these files. And I was like, okay, that for me is a good way for me to explain it and to think about it, because you're, so ocularly, you're through your eyes, it's getting to a part of your brain that is closer to the limbic system, right? So when we're doing talk therapy, we're working from the top down. We're basically, we're in the prefrontal cortex. We're talking about planning, you know, we're trying to give people skills from the top down, right? But far more effective is working from the bottom up. So doing things like somatic therapy, being in the body, right? So I start out with, I brought in some essential oils into my office, and I have people, you know, kind of smell them and see if there's anything that resonates with them. And they put it on their hands and they smell them. And then I put binaural music on really soft so they can still hear me and hear the music. And, you know, that's very calming. And then we start in with the talking about it and getting them kind of in there, being reactive to it.
In the recall.
In the recall.
The music's like Anthrax and
yeah, for
that
sure.
stuff,
Yeah.
that's what you
Skrillex. Yeah. Yeah.
I love binaural
Good
beats, by the
call.
way. They
Right.
are, for me personally, they've been a game changer. Whenever
Yeah.
I do process group,
Yeah.
I always have binaural beats on, mostly for me. Hopefully the clients get something out of it too. But yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I put their headphones on and have them listen to that. And then I will scan their field of vision with my little flag pointer, you know. And it's really interesting because sometimes I had a client the other day who had a really interesting eye wobble, right? And I'm like, so did you feel that? She's like, no. And I said, so your eyes kind of did this thing. And she's like, they did. And so we kind of sat in there, you know, for a while. And I am very verbal. So when I did it, I was like talking and telling everyone all of my trauma. But the clients that I've worked with, I'm like, you don't have to talk. Like you can just sit there and stare at this spot, you know, and feel that place in your body, right? And for her, it was like in her chest and tightness in her throat. And she's like, okay, are we done? I'm like, yeah, I guess we're done. I'm sitting here thinking, well, that didn't do anything. And then she texted me later and she's like, okay, the rest of my day, I couldn't believe how much more clear and calm I was. And I didn't rage the way I normally do at things. And I was like, okay, good, because it can bring up some stuff, right? You can be like real sensitive, kind of like EMDR. And people don't necessarily always remember the fact that it can make things worse before it makes it better. But, you know, just having the brain, on a lower level, right? Like at a more unconscious level, working through what has gone on, helps reorganize those pathways to a more healthy and emotionally regulated state. So
It's fascinating.
right?
Yeah.
It's totally above my pay grade exactly how it all works, but I'm like willing to give it a try. Yeah, kind of like you said, I think coming up with new things to deal with, helping people find emotional regulation and like figure out what is it, how they can deal with it, right? And it's whole vagus nerve, you know, polyvagal kind of thing. When you've got 80% of your communication going up through the brainstem and 20% coming down, you know that doing our work from the bottom up is going to be really important. So having people get into their body. So even when I'm in group therapy, I'm doing everything I can to get people out of their chairs. And it can, you know, even if it's like they're doing painting or they're, you know, art therapy, and I'm not even giving them direction because I don't know anything about art. I'm just like, just color or paint. And I talk about play with your inner child. and, you know, then as they're doing that, I'm giving some lecture about some neurology kind of thing because that's my wheelhouse. And yeah, and then at the end, I'll get these really thoughtful questions that, you know, are kind of above that person's normal state of
They're
being.
out kicking their coverage. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, and simple things like even just like tossing balls back and forth to each other and stuff, because when you're getting your body involved while you're talking and processing, there's so much more that goes on in the head, right? And that brain is functioning in such a way that communication is happening on a deeper level, right? So I've had friends who are therapists from other countries, and they're like, I will never understand Americans. You put people in a dark room lit with neon lights or, those fluorescent lighting with no windows, and you tell them to talk about being depressed and anxious. And I'm like, yeah, that is kind of messed up, isn't it?
When you say it like that, yeah, that doesn't sound like the healthiest approach.
And I'm like, well, what do you do in your country? And he says, we walk outside. I'm like, well, what if it's raining or cold? He's like, there's never bad weather. There's only bad clothes. And I'm like, okay. So, and he's like, your best doctors are your feet. I'm like, okay. So I try and just get people as physically in it as I can. And yeah, so we've done things like a post-traumatic growth tree was one of the things that I learned from Mark Pimsler. And it's just really cool. People, I have in group therapy, I don't say anything other than there is no talking. No one can say anything. And I'll put out this, huge thing of Sharpie markers. And I've taped 6 poster boards together. And I'm like, you guys need to draw a tree as a group. And it has to have roots and a trunk and a canopy with fruit in it. And they're like, we can't talk to each other? I'm like, nope. And it's always amazing, like the beautiful things that come out of this, right? And you will have some artist and you'll have somebody who can't draw stick figures, and they all collaborate and they draw this beautiful tree, right? And then we talk about, there's a tree in Texas that's in Hurricane Alley and it's had its limbs ripped off. And
I like to call it Hurricane Alley.
Except for it was a hurricane. Anyways.
Oh.
And it's ripped the limbs off, and it withstood 2 droughts and 4 different hurricanes. And then there's a tree in a mall, and it is taken care of by an app that measures the amount of water in the soil and the amount of nutrients that is in the soil. And it has a canopy over it to make sure it has the exact right amount of sunlight and and it's taken care of by a professional arborist. And which tree are you worried about? Which tree do you think is going to survive the longest?
I would say the one that's being taken care of and monitored and observed and measured.
Yeah. No.
What do you think, Doc?
Well, I mean,
She just gave away the answer.
I know,
did.
but I know. And I mean, the way she asked the question, we knew the answer. But my brain went to, which tree would I pick in a fight? I'd pick the one that's outdoors, right? That's the tougher tree, right? That's the tree that has been able to adapt and survive through a whole bunch of stuff.
Right. And kind of as people, right, when we are sheltered and we don't have experience, we end up not being really kind of as tough as people that have had traumatic experiences.
That have had to get over difficult things, right?
Right, that have had to grow through difficult things.
Right.
And that particular tree in Hurricane Alley produces a tremendous amount of fruit, and it's in a local area, and and it's celebrated. Oh, anyways, so then we talk about I give everybody 3x5 cards, and they have to write their trauma and then what strength they've gained from it and what fruit could come from that strength.
I love that.
And they can't talk, right? And then they just write them all down, and it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
I get a lot of rape down at the bottom, and then, on the trunk, people will write things like, physically stronger, mentally stronger, and then in the fruit, they'll be like, an advocate or whatever. And it's a different way of looking at trauma, because post-traumatic growth, right? The difference between post-traumatic stress disorder and post-traumatic growth encompasses a lot of different things, right? And I had certification with FEMA and Red Cross on being a first responder therapist. And one of the things that is really most valuable is allowing people to move around, to incorporate their body in what's going on, right? So, it's kind of, you would think, oh, calm down, it's okay, here's a blanket, sit down, don't move, it's just lay down or sit down or whatever. But that's not actually necessarily the most effective thing they found, because especially now with like school shootings and stuff, we're having a lot more, there's a greater amount of research on what is actually most helpful in situations like that. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When I'm an ASUDS, advanced substance use disorder counselor, so we don't go too much into like the trauma and the mental health piece. It's more hyper focused on. I like to tell people I'm a sniper with SUD, right? So, but we did touch on trauma a little bit, and the professor at the time compared it to. She showed a little video of like a dog after getting a bath, and how they're wound up, they run around, they shake, right, and exactly what you're talking about. Somebody gets in a car wreck and the first thing that EMTs do is, sit down, and they put a blanket on you and hold still and stay here. And it's, if you watch animals, it's actually the complete opposite when they've gone through something that makes their adrenals go crazy and they're all...
They run.
Yeah, exactly. They get into their body and they use that energy, or they disperse that energy.
Well, and oftentimes the body does that naturally, right? You'll start to shake. Right? Like I was a lifeguard for a long time, and your training kicks in and you jump in the pool and you get the kid out and you hold them, you hold their spine in place, you get them on the backboard and they get in the, in the ambulance, and then you're filling out the paperwork, and then all of a sudden you just start falling to pieces, right? And you start shaking and crying. It's the body's way of getting back online. And
yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So staying in your body during situations like this, with runners, people instead of like freeze, fight, kind of thing. People who actually move, who are consider themselves runners in a scary or traumatic situation where they're like jump out of the way or fight back or whatever, tend to have less PTSD and more post-traumatic growth than people like if you're pinned down during a traumatic situation, if you're pinned in a car during a car accident and you have to wait for the jaws of life to get you out, right? You're the date timestamp in your brain has basically been turned off, because just like when you get really cold and all your blood goes to the center of your body to protect your vital organs, your brain does the same thing. It shuts down all that long-term thinking, and it kind of goes down into the middle.
Survival mode,
right? And it shuts down things, especially like your date timestamp, right? So you have no concept of how long you're actually there or what day it is, and that's what contributes to PTSD. That's why you're like, you could be right there again because your brain didn't know when it happened, and so it just keeps bringing it up as though it were now.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's fascinating. So. I cut you off.
Did
you have something?
Did you? I got all kinds of things.
He's forgotten already.
No, thanks for describing exactly how my life works now, but it's totally true. But no, I have something, but it doesn't seem to fit in very well, but that's all right.
We can make it fit.
I want to go back, way back, okay? You mentioned at the beginning that when you get a patient, you like them to be activated. How do you do that?
Have them talk about the situation.
Okay, so we're picking a particular traumatic event, and you're just having them go through it with you. Okay, and so you've got them sort of in their PTSD. You've got them
and you
sort
have
of reliving the moment a little bit,
right? And you have to like be wise, right? So
Sure.
I have a vet who has very complex.
somebody that takes care of
PTSD.
animals.
A veteran.
Oh, a veteran. I'm sorry.
And he has very complex trauma.
Sure.
So just a lifetime of
Sure.
all kinds of things, right? And most of our vets have very complex trauma.
Sure.
So you start on the periphery, right? So we started on, he gets really frustrated with procrastination. So we started there. And, and I said, listen, you don't have to talk. You don't have to say anything. Right. And so he's just staring at this spot and he's just crying.
Because he's not describing to you his procrastination.
Yeah. But I mean, we talked about it before to where I'm
Okay.
like, how are you feeling right now? And I'm like, at a 0 to 10. He's like, I'm like at an 8. I'm like, perfect. Where do you feel that in your body? He's like, in my hands. And I'm like, okay, I want you to just focus on your hands and just stare at this spot. And after a while he's crying. He's like, I have no idea why I'm crying. I'm like, it's okay. Just stay with it. Just stay with that feeling and just stick with your body. And so it's just fascinating how it kind of works. And you just, I don't know, let it do what it does, I guess.
Interesting.
I'm always fascinated with like trauma work and stuff like that, which brings me into, we've only got 2 minutes here. Help me explain why I get clients and we're going through a BPS, right? And, you ask them questions like, hi, I met you 30 seconds ago. Tell me about all the...
Biopsychosocial for our listeners.
Thank you. A biopsychosocial assessment. And I get this frequently when I go back later in later sessions to talk about the information I gathered during that assessment. I don't want to talk about that. I've talked about that so many times before.
Oh, that's common.
Yeah.
Do you think that's defensiveness? Would you say that that's more take a different modality approach, like the kind of more of the here and now? In other words, at what point does it become counterproductive to revisit these things, or do you believe that it's not?
Right. So, I mean, if it's triggering, if they're saying, I don't want to talk about that, I've already talked about it again, it's actually still triggering.
That's the one you need to talk about.
Yeah, that's the one you need to bring up. Often that's the deal, right? Because when you've worked through it, you're able to use it as a tool. It can become a strength, right? And
a perception shift. You no longer are in the victim mindset. And when I say victim, there are genuine victims out there, but I'm talking about from a mindset to more of a victor or optimistic survivor. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, we got a minute left, my friend. So
I know.
I'm going to ask Don a couple of questions.
Okay, shoot.
Is there anything you want to say last? Is there anything you didn't get across that you want to get across?
Probably after I watch this later, I'll be like, why didn't I?
Oh.
But no.
Nothing you can think of?
No.
Okay, is there any last statements you'd like to make to people listening? It's okay.
That's kind of a loaded question.
It's extremely loaded.
Statements in
general. You
general.
got 30 seconds to come up with something brilliant.
Oh, God. Everybody needs to see a therapist. Therapy is actually incredibly
Yeah, we look at that sometimes as a
healthy.
weakness or oh, you got to go see a therapist.
Yeah. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Especially if you disassociate halfway through the podcast and aren't familiar with what's going on. I'm just teasing you, Doc.
Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for coming. All right,
everybody,
we'll see you guys next week.
We appreciate you listening. Thanks, and we'll see you in 1 week.
Thank you for joining us today on We Do Recover with Jared Miller.
Help us spread our message of hope. Like, comment, and share.
If you have any topics or ideas for future shows, please share that on our Facebook page.
That Facebook page is We Do Recover with Jared Miller. If you or a loved one needs help, please reach out to us. Again, thank you for listening.
Brought to you by Steps Recovery Center, Rise Up Subs, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of its sponsors. This has been a production from A Podcast Studio.